tonight I want to just cover a few safety things to go over to keep our workers and our children safe. I was reading through my Bible last week, and I was reading through the book of Deuteronomy. And it got to the portion to where Moses was rehearsing everything to the children of Israel before he passes everything over to Joshua. And he warns the people. He says, I can tell you right now what's going to happen. You're going to get to the promised land, and you're going to have everything that you wanted, and you're going to get comfortable, and you're going to get prideful, and you're going to become complacent. And he said, when you get to that part, that's going to be when temptations are going to slip in, and that's going to be when you mess up. That's going to be when you fall. And I know a lot of times we take those stories and we apply them to ourselves spiritually, and we talk about like sin and temptation and those things. But I also think it's really important for us to apply those things naturally as well. And I think it's really important when we talk about working with minors, whether that be the babies in the nursery or the children or the youth ministry, that we have to be very careful. And I think that the temptation can be really hard for maybe a church our size where we know everybody. Maybe we're not a huge mega church where there's lots of people. And so, oh, I know that person, and oh, that's their cousin, and all of these things. But that is not the world that we live in. The world that we live in is not a safe place. And so we have to make our churches a safe place for our children, so we keep our children safe as well as keeping our workers safe. It's very important. As a foster parent, there are certain things that we do in our home. And there are things that we started when we very first started fostering, when we had just our two boys, when we started with Jordan and Eli. We started making some ground rules that seemed almost very silly, and they were like, this is dumb, Mom, why are we doing this? But we have certain rules that, you know what, when we are in the living room and we are watching movies, everybody has one blanket. Everybody has their own blankets. We don't share blankets. Now, when I'm sitting here looking at two biological brothers, and they're like, why can't we share a blanket? Mom, this doesn't make sense. This is silly. We have rules like, you know, as far as like when we're playing in our bedrooms, boys don't play with the girls' bedrooms and vice versa. If we have visitors over, like we always keep our doors open. Some of these things, we also have to make the rule like only one person in the bathroom per time. I don't think that's a normal, like something that you should have to rehearse, but we do at our house. But we had to make these rules. But understand, now we have had up to, I think the most we've ever had in our house is 8 kids at a time. But when I have 8 kids in my home at a time, and some of them from different backgrounds, and those kids are not related to each other, even though all of my kids are adopted now, they are not biologically related to each other. And I'm sorry, their temptation comes in and things arise. But because I've taught that back when I had 2 kids that were biological brothers, because I taught them those rules, it's automatically now. And my kids that are newer, they know other way of life. Visitors and friends come over and they automatically tell them, oh, nope, our bedroom door stays open. They automatically say, when we go to the bedroom or go to the living room to watch a movie, everybody pulls out their own blankets, because they just know these are the rules that we put in place even when we were smaller, even though it might have seemed silly to everybody else. We knew that we had plans to grow. We knew that we had plans to bring more children into our household, possibly children that have come from a rough past, and we needed to keep everybody in that house safe. And so we went ahead and made those guidelines, and now it makes sense in our home, the way that we do things. And I will say that I believe that's really important for us to do as a church, that to keep people safe, and that we might have that attitude right now. Well, it's okay. Like we know each other, we know what's going on. But hopefully we have plans to grow. Hopefully we have plans to see new people come in, new people be saved, and people that, come from rough past, that we want to make sure that this is going to be a safe place for them. And so it's really important for us to get these things right now, before we're bigger, before it becomes an issue. Talking to churches and foster parents and people all over, that's usually what happens, is it takes something bad happening, and then everybody's like, okay, let's be on our toes, let's get everything right, let's do this. But how about we do it first? How about we set it up first, so that way there's not a mistake, so that way there's nothing major that happens, and we safeguard from the get-go. And so that's what I want to go over. Just a couple of things. Most of these things are things that we have already been doing here. They are just nice little reminders, and maybe kind of giving you a why behind it. I want to start at the very top underneath the safety policies. And these are the things that I talk about. These are the things that we have to do. Oh, I'm sorry, mine's the pretty sheets. Pastor's was the other one. Mine's the pretty one. I want to talk about under there at the top, the safety policies. And these are the things that I talk about. This is to keep our workers safe as well as to keep our kids safe. And I want to harp on these because I think it's really important. I think adults, we do these a lot. But some of our teenagers, I love you teenagers, worked with you forever, love you guys. But sometimes teenagers don't fully think through these things, and we want to make sure that we're keeping all of our workers safe and above reproach. So a couple of things to do. Number one, always have at least one other worker with you. Whether you are teaching in a Sunday school class, or it's youth ministry, or if whatever it is, if it's nursery, do not ever be by yourself. You need to always have some other worker with you. Now, I think that there does come a point, I realize that our adult workers, especially when we get to like children's ministry and youth ministry, there comes a point where our adult workers are scarce. Like, you can have them as long as it's one of your teenage workers, as long as they are trained, as long as they know what they're supposed to be doing. They're here at these trainings or doing the other background checks and things that we're asking them to do, that they can be your second person. That is okay. But we don't ever need to be by ourselves with the kids, and we don't ever need to send our kids off with somebody else by themselves. So especially like when it comes to doing things, if you're having to transport a kid out to their parents, out in the sanctuary, send two people with you. Don't send with just one person with that child. If somebody's going to the bathroom, even though you just took the entire group, and now there's one person, and I can say this because y'all, it's probably my kid. My Eli is going to pee like every 10 minutes. Like, I know it's my kid, I'm sorry. But you can't just send just one worker with one child, even though, the whole group just went, but now one's got to go, and it's so easy. I know it. I've done youth ministry, I've done children's ministry for years, and I know it's so easy. Like, hey, just you real quick, you take him real quick. We cannot do that. We've got to keep our workers safe, and we have to keep our children safe. Always have somebody else with you. And as a matter of fact, just do things in large groups. Like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have to go to the bathroom. This is what we're doing now. We're all going out here. I'm sorry that you don't want to play outside. This is what we're all doing. Do everything in large groups. That way all of your workers can stay together. That way there are lots of eyes on everybody. It's whenever we get to those points when people are getting off and being secluded, that's when things begin to slip in. When we can't vet for each other and say, well, no, I was right here. I see my worker. There's no way that they said that to your child. I see my worker. There's no way that they did that to your child. But when they're secluded or they're off, or even, here, like, you have some people on this side and some people on that side, and you can't actually put eyes on each other, that's when arguments can come in. And believe me, a mama or a daddy is going to believe their kid. Like, they said that they did this. Oh, you didn't have eyes on them. You can't tell me that they didn't say that. Or you can't tell me that they didn't do that. It's all about protecting our children and protecting our workers. And then also keep in mind, I love that we do like children's ministry in here. It's a very big open area where people can walk in freely. Not in a creepy way, but we can walk in and we can kind of see each other. Like, it's just a big open area. Try to do ministry in those types of places. If for whatever reason you are in a situation where you are in more of a closed, secluded room, keep that door open, and especially if that door doesn't have a window. Absolutely. Like, all of our Sunday school rooms have these big windows where everybody can see into them. But if you're in a situation or in a place where there is not a window where people cannot just freely walk by and see you, you need to have that door open. So I know it gets really tough when we talk about like bathroom. Hopefully Sister Sue's not struggling with this in the youth department. Hopefully everybody's got that handled. I know it can be really hard when we're dealing with like little kiddos and we're dealing with like bathrooms and situations like that. When it comes to nursery and we're changing tables, make sure like our other worker can see what's going on. Obviously we have to be changing diapers. Those kids can't take care of themselves. When we get to our older kids, I believe that the rule is they have to be potty trained in order to be in the class out here, so they should be able to handle everything in the restroom by themselves. But I know there's going to be a kid that's going to be like, oh, I can't button my pants, or I can't get the toilet to flush, or something like that. Prop that door open. Prop it open. Make sure that somebody can walk by and somebody can see what is going on. Do not ever, ever, ever be in a place to where it is you alone and that door is closed. Make sure the door is open. All of those things make sense. Kind of see the why behind them. So some things not to do. Maybe this is something that doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, but please do not ask children for physical affection. I know in our minds, I believe that it's oh, we just love you, like, come here, like, give me a hug, like, oh, let me see you, let me squeeze you. And there might be some kids that thrive on that. You make sure that you do it in a healthy way. There's nothing wrong with loving on kids. Some kids, the only time they might get good affection and good genuine love is when they are at a church. So please do love on those kids. But make sure that when they're hugging you, like, hey, you guys keep it above the shoulders type of thing. Do side hugs, all of those types of things. Please don't sit like a kid in your lap. Nursery is one thing, but when they start getting this age, be careful about sticking kids in your laps. How about I scoot up a chair right here and you sit so close to me we can't see any air between us. But do not set them in your lap. Be very careful about how you are requesting for our affection from them. Number one, we want to show them what are healthy ways to show affection. And there might be some kids that are just loved differently. And there might be some kids that have come from a past where it might trigger some things for them and it might hurt them, even though you were being very genuine in the way and very, righteous in everything that you were doing. Some kids might not be comfortable with those types of levels of affection. So I know a lot of us have seen it. What some of the teachers have been doing is they have like the little signs on their classroom when the kids come in, and it says, tell me what you want. And it says, and the kids tell them 1, 2, 3, or 4. 1 is I want a hug, 2 is I want a fist bump, 3 is I want a high five, 4 is I want a handshake. Like, you ask the kids, like, and go ahead and get to know your kids, like, hey, how do you want? Do you like it when I give you a hug, or would you rather just a high five, or would you rather just a fist bump? Have that conversation, or like I said, post it somewhere in the classroom. So that way when the kids come in, they tell you, hey, this is what I want. I would like a fist bump from you, or I would like a hug from you. And give that opportunity to the kids instead of, like I said, just like, hey, come here, give me a hug, and those things. Do not ask specifically for those affections from the children. Also, we need to be really, really careful about what we post on our private social medias. So most of the time, I believe they still have the children's church that they sign. When they sign in children's church and when they sign up for the nursery, I think they even have it in youth, where we give Victory Assembly of God permission to show pictures of our children on their social media or on the website, and they mark yes or no. Please be checking that. I know, coming from my stance, we have different kiddos come with us as foster parents. I have some kids that might be with me some weeks that are not allowed to be on social media. There's no telling what situation a family might come in here with. And so make sure that you have that written permission from those parents in order to share it on a social media or on websites, and understand that that is not for your private social media. That is for the church's social media. So they did not give you the right to share that. So we have to be really careful about that. I know this might sound really silly, but that's just the world that we live in. Sister Elizabeth is one of my all-time bestest friends, and I had Wesley in the nursery, and I took a super cute picture with Thomas and Wesley, and I made sure with her. I showed her the picture. I said, hey, this is the picture. Are you okay that I share this on my social media? And this is what I'm going to put. And she said, yes, that's fine. I'm not saying that you can't ever share those things, but always go above and beyond. Make sure you show them the picture. Make sure you tell them what you're going to say. Make sure they know that your Facebook is private, or maybe it's public. Go above and beyond to make sure that's okay. Or, it's a really amazing trick that as foster parents know, backs of heads. If you want to show a picture, like the backs of heads, like you can't tell who that kid is, make sure you're not giving out names. Make sure you're not giving out personal information if you do not have that permission from parents. And then again, it kind of goes back to the other one, but I think it's just the most important one that I really want to stress. Do not for any reason ever be alone with a child. And I do want to say that it is possible to have a private conversation with somebody, even in a public room. Like, that's possible. Like, I understand, like, if a child's, like, you know, you're having to maybe talk one-on-one with a child and you don't want to publicly, like, get onto them. We're going to talk about that in a second. You don't want to tell the whole class, like, hey, this child is acting up and they need to, you know, sit down. No, you need to have that private conversation. You can still step away and have a private conversation in a large room. That was one of the things that we did in youth ministry that we harped on all of the time. And I would never be alone with the teenagers, especially when it came to the opposite genders. Boys all the time wanting dating advice. I'm like, leave those girls alone. But I could have a private conversation with one of my young men in my youth group while everybody else was in the room. It's possible to step away, to lower your voice, but to still be in the large group and everybody still have their eyes on you. It is possible. So please keep those things in mind. Another thing that I would like to talk about really quickly is kind of when we talk about disciplining children. I was raised in a home, like, if I acted up, my mom would just beat my tail. Like, I just got butt whooping, y'all. My last butt whooping was when I was 18 years old. I thought I was grown. And my mama told me very quick, like, I was not grown, and she broke a paddle on my butt at 18 years old. You cannot do that to kids. Don't do that. You're not allowed to do that. And honestly, even some of the things that maybe we grew up, or maybe the way things worked in our homes, that's not necessarily going to work with every single child that comes into our youth ministry, our children's ministry, or our minors. That's not always going to work with everybody. So there are these things that I've learned as being a foster parent. These are teachings that I teach other foster parents, is what we call the 3 R's. When a child comes in and, okay, I'm talking about my kids, y'all. When my kids, like, I'm not talking about, like, oh, like, they're just sad, like, bless their heart. Like, you're having, like, a kid that's having a meltdown, like one of my babies. Okay, if they are getting really, really upset, they're having a fit, they're extremely sad, they're crying, they're freaking out in the nursery, whatever it is, the very first thing you need to do is you need to try to regulate that child. You need to try to get them to calm down. If they are screaming and hollering, or they are extremely upset, they have perceived that there is something wrong happening. Maybe what you're seeing is not a big deal. Like, mom's just out in the sanctuary, it's not a big deal. But to them, it's a perceived danger. It is a big deal to them. Maybe, you know, like, you just mess up on your coloring sheet. Like, it's not a big deal. Dear goodness, for my OCD child, that is the end of the world. Strange, shaking her head, yes. If my child messes up on a craft, y'all, it is the end of the world. But to them, it's very upset. So the very first thing you need to do is regulate them, get them to calm down. So redirection is amazing. Like, hey, look at this toy over here. Hey, how about you help me lay out the snack? How about you help me these, you know, I know you mess up on your craft. How about you go help the little kids? Go help them with their craft. Redirect them. Get to thinking about something else. Take deep breaths. Sometimes as the adults, like, I need a deep breath. Take a deep breath with me. We'll do it together. We'll walk through this together. Another thing that's really amazing, if you have a child, and I'm talking like nursery, youth ministry, like, I've had kids that are like fighting mad. I used to have teenagers that came in wanting to pick a fight, came in off the van ministry. You know what you do? Give them a snack. Who's going to be mad while they're eating a cookie? Like, give them a snack, whether it's the nursery, whether it's the youth, whether it's the children. Like, okay, let's have snack time. Right now, you're upset, everybody, let's eat a snack. And even, like, if you have, like, honestly, like, really great doing the drinks, drink it through a straw. So that way they're having to do those deep breaths. Maybe they won't sit here with you and do those deep breaths right now, but they're drinking through that straw. Get them to redirect. Once they're calmed down, then that's when you can relate to them. Then you need to connect with that child. Be aware that having like this like one-on-one like eye contact with people can be very intimidating. That can be very intimidating for the kids. It can get them to re-escalate. It can get them to get really upset again, or very angry again, or begin to lash out again. Try side-by-side activities like, hey, let's right here, we're gonna color together. You color right here, you're side by side. Let's take a walk around the room. Again, you're not going out by yourself. You know what? Everybody's right here. Me and you are going to walk around the group, doing side by side activities relating to that child, letting them know that you are there. You're not going to yell at them. You're not going to take things away from them. You're going to try to make things easier. You care about them. You love them. Side by side activities. And after you've been able to connect with them, then that's when you're able, they're able to reason and able to listen. Like, hey, now that you've calmed down, now that you realize, hey, Miss Jenny loves you, and I'm here to keep you safe and happy, and we're going to have a good time today. I'm going to teach you about Jesus, but you got to know what you did was not okay. Standing up in the middle of the crowd and interrupting while I was in the middle of the lesson, that's not how we do things. You need to raise your hand or whatever. That's the time after they have done regulated and after you've made that connection with them, let them know like, hey, I love you. This is coming from a place of love, but then have those talks with them. And so those are just kind of some tips. It might not work on every child, but I think for a lot of our kiddos that it will. And then very quickly, the last thing that I want to talk to you about is recognizing abuse. Right now, because so many kids, well, let me say this too. During the time of COVID, when everything went into shutdown, the reports of child abuse went on an all-time low. Nobody was being reported, and it sounded amazing. Like, hey, like not that many kids are being abused. That wasn't the case. It's not that kids weren't being abused, but reports weren't coming in because most of the reports are done by teachers and people at school, and the kids were not going to school. And even now, we are still living in a time where, yes, a lot of us are getting back to normal, but there's an overwhelming amount of people who have decided to keep their children home. And it's so easy now for everybody to do virtual school or do homeschool, and it's been made very accessible to everybody. So you might have some kids that come into this church that have nobody else to talk to. They have nobody else to report to. There's going to be nobody else that's going to be there to defend them than somebody that's inside of this church that's working with them in children's ministry, our nursery, our youth ministry. And we have to be ready to defend these children. So a couple of things to be on the lookout for is unexplained marks or bruises. I always try to make sure I do like really good, like even like when something happens, like I text Angie like, hey, my kids are coming to church. Please do not take a public prayer request. Like this is what has happened in our house. Like just know. Like, you know what? My things are not unexcused. Like this is what happened. I'm explaining to you. You know, they have like a bruise on them. This is what happened. But if you see a child that honestly is coming in on a regular basis, and it's bruises that, hey, these can't be explained. They can't fall down a flight of stairs every single week. You know something is going on. Please speak up for that child. If you see physical or verbal abuse happening, please report that. I literally, you guys, 2 weeks ago, I literally had somebody call me and said that they heard somebody like yelling at their kid, like, I'm not talking, like, just like, don't you do that, or I'm going to spank your tail. I tell my kids I'm going to beat them all the time. They're foster kids. Like, it's like actually against the law for me to beat them, but like, I tell them that all the time. Like, I'm going to beat your tail, you know. But like, if you hear like somebody that is literally like yelling, like this person was like yelling at their kids, like, I want to kill you type of thing. Like, it was very, very harsh. And she was like, I didn't know if I should report that or not. I think because we live in the South and we live in a world where for so long, like, it's kind of like everybody mind your own business. Like, I think it's like a Southern thing. Like, well, they're going to take care of their kids their way. This is how I discipline them. This is how that. That's not okay anymore. That's not the world that we live in anymore. If you see physical abuse happening, or if you hear even verbal abuse that's going on, please report that. And if a child confides in you, if a child tells you, like, hey, somebody put their hands on me, hey, somebody hurt me, hey, somebody put their hands on me where they weren't supposed to, somebody sexually abused me, if they confide in you at all on any level, report that. In the United States and in the state of Florida, all adults are mandate reporters. We are required by law to report that. And this is what I like to tell everybody. We are mandate reporters, not mandate investigators. It is not up to us to say, well, let me go talk to mom and see if she always talks to him this way. Let me go see if maybe mom's just having a bad day. We're not investigators, we're reporters. I don't care if that child, if you know that child lies and that child will tell you, like, that wall over there is purple. I stand right here, that's a purple wall. If you know that child is the biggest liar on the face of the planet, I don't care. If they tell you somebody has hurt them or somebody has abused them, you report it. We are not to investigate, but we are to report those. We report those to DCF. I actually, there's a website where you can do it on a website, and there is a phone number there as well. I have listed those for you. They're very easy to Google. I have the number saved to my phone, because I will tell you, I report. And I'm just being honest with you guys, I tell people this all the time. I promise I'm not embarrassing him. I have called the state and I have made a report on my husband before. A child came into my home. A child said that he hurt them. I know good and well that he didn't hurt them, but because I know that my husband didn't, the way for me to protect him was to call somebody in and say, hey, this was the report that was done, or this is the report, I reported it, I want you guys to investigate it. And of course, it was closed very quickly because there was no truth found into it. But I report. If I have foster parents that say, hey, if a child says that I hurt them, I will hand them the phone and call the abuse hotline and say, hey, please report me. Let somebody come in and do an investigation. We are not investigators. We are reporters. Even if you don't believe it, even if there's that temptation, like, hey, I want to kind of find out what's going on here, that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to report it. The numbers are there, and then please, you are required by the law, by the state of Florida, as an adult, those of you that are over 18, you are required not to tell Pastor Jeff or to tell your ministry leader. You are actually required to do one of these two things. Report it online or call the number. You're required to do that. But then please do call your ministry leader. Please do call Pastor. I put his cell phone number on there as well. Please call him, let him know what's going on before somebody shows up at the church, an investigator, and they're like, hey, we're here to investigate this. That was called in by one of your ministry workers. It's like, oh, okay. So please do, but understand, and I say that to give you guys the weight of how important that it is that we do make these in that way, not just be investigators. So these are just a couple of the things that I wanted to share with you guys tonight. I think we're already ended. Is there any?